Hi, y'all. This is Carrie D. Welcome to the Coffee with Carrie Homeschool podcast. Join me every Thursday for some much-needed encouragement, coffee, and conversation. It's my prayer that this podcast will help you homeschool one step at a time, one day at a time, and one cup of coffee at a time. Hey, if you're blessed each week by our podcast, make sure you check out my book, Just Breathe and Take a Sip of Coffee, Homeschool in Step with God. Then share our podcast with some of your homeschooling friends who might need a little encouragement this week. You can also find me at my website, coffeewithcarrie.org. So stick around, pour yourself a cup of coffee, put your feet up, and take a little coffee break with me. Let's get started. Hey, Ventura, California, I'm coming to you. The beach is calling me. I'm going to be in Ventura, California on Saturday, October 15th. If you live in the Ventura County or you and your friends are in driving distance, join me for an all-day seminar, Just Breathe and Simplify Your Homeschooling. Now, during the morning session, I'm going to be sharing 8 simple strategies that you can apply immediately to help you remove the chaos from your life and to simplify your home and your homeschooling while still focusing on what's truly important and having fun. The afternoon session is going to focus on how to use a less is more curriculum. I'm going to be sharing how to teach almost every subject, including math, in a simple and inexpensive way that educates the whole child using a Christ-centered, literature-based, interest-led, family-style approach. Then I always end with an open Q&A session. So if you would like more information or you would like to register, go to my website, coffeewithcarrie.org. If you would like for me to visit your area and host a Just Breathe and Simplify Your Homeschooling seminar, shoot me an email at coffeewithcarrie.org and let's get it organized. Let's talk about one of my favorite subjects today, books. What kind of books do you choose for your family read aloud time? That is such a great question, and I love to hear it because it means mamas are reading aloud with their families. In this week's episode, I want to share with you some of our family's favorite read-aloud books. Now, for us, read-aloud time was a staple in our mornings. I use read-aloud time to build memories and to make connections, and as the main way to learn and to teach. Now, Charlotte Mason, she uses living books. Classical education encourages the incorporation of the classics into your studies. Carol Joy Seid teaches a whole seminar on using a literature-based approach. And publishers like Sunlight, Bookshark, 5 in a Row, and Beautiful Feet, why, those are just to name a few, revolve around using great literature books as a homeschooling framework. Sarah Mackenzie and her website and podcast, Read Aloud Revival, its sole purpose is to support moms in reading more with their kids. Now, if you haven't read the Read Aloud Handbook by Jim Trelease, the Read Aloud Family by Sarah Mackenzie, the Enchanted Hour by Megan Cox, and Jennifer Pepito's new book, Mothering by the Book, then take some time this month or this year to read each of these books. They're jam-packed with reasons why reading aloud to your children, no matter how old they are, is vital, and most of them even give ways to make the read aloud experience more meaningful and impactful. Now, for me, the hardest part wasn't finding 20 or so minutes a day to read aloud with the kids or to listen to an Audible book as a family. The hardest part was finding quality literature to read to them and then narrowing down those choices. It's a great problem to have, right? There are so many wonderful, heartwarming books out there. Now, I have a list of some of my all-time favorite family read-alouds that I want to share with you in this episode. But before I do, I want to share with you just a few reminders first. 1, don't stop reading aloud picture books to your kids, even if your kids are much older. There are so many wonderful picture books that tell stories with important themes, such as redemption and forgiveness and family and friendship. There are also great picture books that teach very complicated science, math, and historical concepts in very simple ways with beautiful illustrations to help teach the topic. And don't forget about the picture books that retell Shakespearean plays and retell classic novels and much loved poetry through illustrations. Read aloud chapter books, but don't stop reading quality picture books too. And second, don't be afraid to add some of your family's favorite read aloud books to your own family library. Once you read aloud a book to your family and everyone loves it, it's okay to purchase it, put it on your shelf, and to encourage your children when they're older or more fluent readers to reread the book on their own. Now, if you've been reading aloud with your kids, you already know how impactful a children's book can be when you read it as a second time as an adult. You're in a different stage of life, you're more mature, and you have more experiences to draw from. So the story, the characters, and the themes, they hit you in a more profound way as an adult. The same is true for your child when they read a family favorite as a teen or a middle schooler. And 3, don't feel guilty about not finishing a chapter book that came highly recommended from a friend or from a read aloud quote-unquote expert. Your family's different from mine, and your family's different than your friend's homeschooling family. Your friend's family may love The Hobbit, but maybe The Hobbit bores you and your family to tears. It's okay after 4 or 5 chapters to shelf a book that isn't keeping your family's attention. Now, there was one book that our CC community highly recommended, and it was even on the required reading list in Challenge B. Our family read it, and we pushed our way through it, even though we were bored to tears. I kept thinking, we must be missing something because everyone else loved this book. My kids kept begging me to stop reading it, but I kept telling them that it had to get better because it came so highly recommended. Well, let's just say our family will never get back those hours that we spent reading that book. Until this day, when my kids are asked what books they don't like, this particular book is always at the top of their list. I learned my lesson. What's good for others may not be entertaining or meaningful to our family. It's okay to put a book away that you started to read and start something else. And 4, don't assume an award-winning book is appropriate. Start with the classics and books published before 1970. You really can't go wrong with these. Any book published after 1970, make sure you read it first before you read it aloud to your family. If a book comes highly recommended by a Christian publisher that you trust, like Sunlight or My Father's World or The Good and the Beautiful, then you probably don't have to pre-read it. But if it was published in the last 10 years, definitely read it first. The language and slang and vocabulary deemed acceptable today may not align with your family standards, and it goes without saying that the themes and the values present in these more modern publications may have a hidden or not so hidden agenda that doesn't align with God's standards and His design for marriage, families, sexuality, gender, or social justice. Once your teen is in high school, try to read the same books that they're reading on their own so you can discuss them, or at the very least, know what he or she is feeding their minds with. Now, if your teen is a prolific reader, try as hard as you can to keep up and either pre-read the books or at the very least read the same books at the same time, because there is so much filth that can slip through in these newer young adult publications. Okay, so how do you pick out books to read each year? Well, I personally start with the historical time period that we're learning about that year, and I choose several historical fictions and biographies that are set in the same time period. Then I look at the science and the art and the music that we're going to be learning together as a family. And I try to pick novels, nonfictions, and biographies that fit with one or some of those topics too. However, I usually use picture books more for the areas of science, art, and music. Then I try to pick a few classics to read aloud.